London, 1888. A thick fog spreads through the city, covering the streets in darkness. A figure lurks in the shadows, silent, unseen, deadly. 5 women brutally murdered. A killer who vanishes without a trace. Tonight on Sinister, we unravel the nightmare of Jack the Ripper. Who was he? Why did he kill? And could the truth still be lurking in the blood-stained pages of history? Turn down the lights, lock your doors, and let's begin. Jack the Ripper is one of the most infamous serial killers of all time. Hundreds of suspects have been named, yet the case continues to baffle investigators over a century later. In 1888, the East End of London, particularly the Whitechapel district, was a crime-ridden area plagued by poverty. A series of brutal murders terrorized the public, committed by a killer with no clear motive. While many attribute 5 murders to Jack the Ripper, referred to as the canonical 5, others believe he may have killed up to 11 women. The victims were primarily prostitutes, as many women in Whitechapel resorted to prostitution to survive. At the time of the murders, literacy was increasing, and newspapers covered the crimes extensively. The public became morbidly fascinated. On August 31st, 1888, at 3:40 a.m., the body of Mary Ann Nichols was found in Bucks Row, Whitechapel. She was discovered by Charles Cross, who saw what he initially thought was a bundle. Another man, Robert Paul, approached, and police arrived shortly after. Nichols was found on her back, her throat severely slashed, and her body disemboweled. She had been dead for about 30 minutes, meaning the killer was likely nearby. On September 8, 1888, Annie Chapman's body was found at 29 Hanbury Street by John Davis, an elderly resident of the building. Her throat was cut and her womb was removed. Dr. George Baxter Phillips, the divisional police surgeon, suggested the killer had anatomical knowledge. On September 27, 1888, the Central News Agency received a letter from the supposed killer, now known as the Dear Boss letter. The letter taunted the police, claimed responsibility for the murders, and introduced the name Jack the Ripper. The letter read, "Dear Boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue, and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope, huh? Ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck, yours truly, Jack the Ripper." Following the delivery of the Dear Boss letter, the terror in Whitechapel intensified. Just days later, on the night of September 30th, the Ripper struck twice in what would come to be known as the double event. The first victim, Elizabeth Stride, was discovered at around 1 a.m. in Dutfield's yard off Burner Street. Her throat had been slashed, but her body was otherwise untouched, leading investigators to believe the killer may have been interrupted before he could mutilate her. Less than an hour later, the mutilated body of Catherine Eddowes was found in Mitre Square. Unlike Stride, Eddowes had suffered the full horror of the Ripper's brutal ritual. Her face had been mutilated, her kidney removed, and her body disemboweled with chilling precision. A blood-stained fragment of her apron was later discovered in Goulston Street, and above it, a cryptic message written in chalk read, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Fearing the message would ignite anti-Semitic violence, police quickly erased it before it could be photographed. The press and public were now in a frenzy. Letters claiming to be from the killer poured into newspapers and police stations. One, dated October 1st and dubbed the Saucy Jackie postcard, referenced the double event before it was widely known, suggesting it may have come from someone with inside knowledge. Another, the From Hell letter, arrived with half a human kidney, possibly Eddowes's, preserved in alcohol. Though the authenticity of these messages remains debated, their effect was undeniable. Jack the Ripper had cemented his legend in blood and ink. Weeks passed with no further attacks, and London hoped the nightmare was over. But on November 9, 1888, the Ripper returned for what would be his most savage and final known killing. The victim was Mary Jane Kelly, a 25-year-old sex worker living at 13 Miller's Court, just off Dorset Street. Unlike the previous victims, she was murdered indoors, which gave the killer time and privacy to unleash unspeakable violence. When police forced open her door that morning, they found her body horribly mutilated. It was the Ripper's final and most gruesome statement. After Kelly's death, the murders abruptly stopped. Though other killings occurred in Whitechapel, none matched the signature brutality or ritualistic pattern of the Ripper's crimes. The police investigation had questioned countless suspects and posted rewards, but no arrest was ever made. The streets grew quiet again, but the fear lingered. So did the questions. Over the following years, dozens of suspects were proposed. Some, like Montague Druitt, a troubled barrister who died by suicide shortly after Kelly's murder, drew suspicion due to the timing of his death. Others, like Joseph Barnett, Kelly's former partner, were considered for their close proximity to the victims. The police also fixated on a Polish-Jewish immigrant named Aaron Kosminski, a man with severe mental illness who was eventually committed to an asylum. Though not arrested, his name appeared in early suspect lists compiled by detectives working the case. As time passed, the case slipped from criminal investigation into urban myth. The identity of Jack the Ripper became one of the great unsolved mysteries of history. But over a century later, new technology offered new hope. In 2014, scientists tested a blood-stained shawl believed to have been recovered from the murder scene of Catherine Eddowes, the Ripper's fourth known victim. Using advanced mitochondrial DNA analysis, they matched genetic material on the shawl to descendants of two people, Eddowes herself and Aaron Kosminski, a name long whispered in Ripper investigations. Kosminski was a Polish-Jewish immigrant and a barber who lived in Whitechapel at the time of the murders. He was known to suffer from paranoid schizophrenia, harbored a deep fear and hatred of women, and was committed to an asylum in 1891. After the killings stopped, he had even been named as a suspect by the lead investigator, Inspector McNagton, back in 1894. But without modern forensic tools, nothing could be proven. The DNA evidence is not absolute. It matches mitochondrial DNA, which is inherited maternally and shared among relatives. Still, it's strong enough to place Kosminski back at the scene, giving weight to the theory that he was indeed the killer. Yet despite this breakthrough, alternative theories persist. One of the most sensational involves Prince Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria and second in line to the throne. This theory suggests the murders were part of a royal conspiracy to silence secrets or cover up an illegitimate child. It's a captivating idea, ripe with scandal and shadowy plots, but historians generally dismiss it as unfounded, built more on speculation than fact. In contrast, the case against Kosminski is built on timeline, behavior, location, and now genetic evidence. A man once overlooked by history, whose mind unraveled in silence, may finally be unmasked as one of history's most infamous killers. After more than 130 years, the mystery may be solved. The face of Jack the Ripper might have always belonged to Aaron Kosminski.